I'm a Community Leadership Officer for the Indianapolis Foundation, and in this video I'll be showing you how to complete the Summer Youth Program Fund budget table for your Summer Youth Program Fund application. Let's start by taking a look at eligible expenses. You can request part-time or temporary staffing for your summer program. You can request a percentage of full-time staff that work on your summer program, so you can't request 12 months of someone's salary, but you could request if they're working 20 hours a week over the course of the summer, you could put that time in your application. You can request youth wages. These are specifically youth wages for programs whose purpose is to provide summer employment to teens. So if the primary goal of your program, which you'll identify in your application, is youth employment, you can request youth wages. And this year, that will be a separate line item in your program budget. Program supplies. Transportation, whether that's to or from your program or to and from field trips, meals and snacks, rent, utilities, or other space costs for the summer program, equipment. Now, please keep in mind, this must be clearly tied to your summer program plans, right? You need this equipment in order to do your summer program, not just because your organization would like to have this equipment. And if you have a large equipment request, that should still come through the LEI Capital Grants Program. And finally, licensure or training for your summer program staff. Like, let's say everybody needs to get CPR first aid training, for instance. There are two budget tables in your application. Table 1 is going to show your total program budget. This is how much it costs to do your summer program. It's not about what sources of funding you have. It's just, you as a responsible program director have created a budget so that you can anticipate and go out and raise the money if you need to in order to run your program. The total cost includes all sources of funding from Summer Youth Program Fund. Table 2 shows the breakdown of your request to Summer Youth Program Fund. This table also shows other sources of funding to your program. So we'll take a look at what this looks like in a minute, but other sources of funding might include things like donations of time or goods and services. It could include program fees that you charge families in order to enroll a youth in your program. It can include just the expenses or income from your organization's just annual operating budget. And it could include requests to other funders that you plan to ask or that you've asked and are still waiting to hear on. One thing to keep in mind with this, especially as it relates to total program budget, is we kind of want to understand how much it's going to cost to run your program so we can kind of assess whether it's a viable program, right? Funders care a lot about viability. We want to understand, okay, they're planning to raise $100,000. Maybe Summer Youth Program Fund is only going to chip in $15,000. Is that a viable program? How are they going to adjust their plans if they, have only got $15,000 from Summer Youth Program Fund? There are lots of ways to close that gap, but those are one of the questions we look at, and that's what we're trying to understand, the difference between your total program budget, right? How much it really costs to do the program and what that request to Summer Youth Program Fund is. So this is an example of what Table 1 could look like for a program. And you'll see that we break down the cost of your program into some pretty standard categories. There's an opportunity to write in what you think it will cost. Hopefully these have been researched and are reasonable. And there's an opportunity to provide a short description of how you arrived at that cost. And I will say this is a good exercise in general, but it's also something that's helpful for funders as we're reviewing applications to kind of understand how you're thinking about this and whether those costs are reasonable. So I'll leave it at that. You can see here that the total cost of this program is $31,961. I can tell just by looking at this program budget that this is a youth employment program, and that's because there's a line item here for youth wages, right? So this is a program who's going to spend $15,000 over 5 weeks, it looks like, to employ 10 youth for 25 hours a week at $12 an hour, which feels like a pretty good rate. It looks like this program, for instance, is going to have 2 field trips, and they need a bus to do that, so they've got a line item there. They're going to have some meals and snacks, although it does look here, and I will see this reinforced on the second budget table, that they're going to get those donated. They are not planning to purchase any equipment, which is fine. It's very rare that every single line here would have something in it. It's only what's relevant to your program. I love to see this. This is a program that is planning to do Red Cross first aid training and CPR training for their summer program staff. And I can tell just by looking at $37 or $111, Those are not round numbers, which tells me they are actually researched numbers, and those are actually what it costs. You can also see here that they're going to hire 2 temporary staff, as well as part of the cost of their program is just how much of their regular full-time staff are working during the summer months on the summer program. So this is an example of what Table 2 looks like. And I know this is very overwhelming, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So again, and this will feed. So you're going to fill out Table 1, and then the first column of Table 2 will automatically fill out based on what you put in Table 1. And it's just going to repeat, hey, here's how much we said each of these line items would cost, and here's that total program budget again. So that's pretty cool. But then in the other columns, you're going to show what the source of funding for each of those things are. So in some cases, for instance, full-time staff, salary, wages, and benefits, that is being funded from committed sources. My guess is your annual organizational budget, that's covered. So that's why you only see $4,200 here in column B. Now, we've got temporary summer staff, and it looks like here they're going to break down that cost with a little bit of a request to Summer Youth Program Fund, but they found some other source of funding. Maybe those are program fees or their annual operating budget that they're going to use to pay for those temporary staff. So as you can see, you can break down a line item across multiple sources of funding, or you can just have one source of funding. Youth wages, they are planning to request all of youth wages from Summer Youth Program Fund, which is great. We actually have several funders who are part of our collaborative who really care about youth employment, and this is the kind of thing they love to fund. Program supplies, it looks like they're not planning to request funding from Summer Youth Program Fund because they've already got that covered. Let's say they already buy hundreds of t-shirts every year, and just so it's already covered somewhere else. Transportation, they are requesting that to Summer Youth Program Fund, and this is where things start to get interesting. Meals and snacks, right? They know there's a cost associated with that, but the total cost of that is being donated. And they had made a note on that on their previous, on Table 1, so I know that's coming from Second Helpings. Rent, utilities, or other space costs, it looks like they don't have that in the hand. So sometimes we talk about column C here, is birds in the bush versus column A, column B, column D are kind of birds in hand, right? Like this is the stuff you're still waiting to find out. You won't know at the time that you submit your application. Maybe they're going to ask that organization to donate the cost of that, or they're going to go seek a small grant, a sponsorship from somewhere, or they're planning to ask, maybe they have a partnership with a local congregation and they're going to ask that congregation to bear that cost. Whatever it is, it looks like that's not yet certain, but it is something they're going to go out and find. No cost for equipment, so nothing appears here. And then licensure training for summer staff, they are requesting that to Summer Youth Program Fund, which is perfectly reasonable. This is something that we really believe in best practices, and it's absolutely okay to put that request into your Summer Youth Program Fund. So as you can see from this table, although the total program budget is about $32,000, they're only requesting about $20,000 from Summer Youth Program Fund. That's a good thing to note. It is very rare, if not more or less impossible, that Summer Youth Program Fund will cover the entire cost of your summer program. So you want to be really thoughtful about what you request to Summer Youth Program Fund. And then you can see here that they've got other sources from their organizational budget, let's say, from some other funder that they plan to go talk to, and something has been donated, so they're showing that here. So that's the difference between Table 1, which shows your total program budget, and Table 2, which shows what you're requesting from Summer Youth Program Fund, as well as how you're finding funding to cover the other costs of Summer Youth Program Fund. And again, they are not requesting their full program budget, they are requesting a portion to the Summer Youth Program Fund. Here are a few more tips to wrap us up. Budgets help funders consider your program viability and your organizational credibility. So viability is if you've got a very, very large program budget and you do not have any other source of funding besides your request to Summer Youth Program Fund, or you are only planning to ask Summer Youth Program Fund and you're going to go find another $80,000 from other funders that you haven't named yet, that's where we kind of have some questions about viability. Will they actually be able to do this? If they don't get all their funding, what will happen? And funders may take that into consideration when making a funding decision. Credibility is a different question. So that's, does this organization seem responsible? Have they done research? Are these costs reasonable? Do I trust this organization just based on how they've written their program budgets? I will say budget tables can make or break your credibility. This is kind of sometimes where the rubber hits the road in terms of it looks like this first person has done their homework. This organization has some idea of what they're about to embark upon, things like that. So even honestly, the degree to which we can tell whether you'll be a good steward of those funds may show up in how you write your program budgets and making things really clear and legible about what you're requesting and how you arrived at those numbers. So, research your costs so that they are realistic and reasonable. So we saw the example of somebody looked up the cost of CPR training from the Red Cross, and it was $37 a person, and they're hiring 3 people. So they didn't put in, a round number like 500, which if I were a funder and I saw they only had 3 people on their staff and it was going to cost $500 to train them all in first aid, I would wonder, has this person done any research? So having realistic and reasonable costs, and remember, funders see lots of program budgets, so we have a pretty fair idea of what actually are reasonable costs. Use the notes column and other spaces provided to explain how you arrived at numbers. So you'll have a chance to explain your budgets in your application. You also have a chance to talk about what are the other sources of funding if you have listed any that you're planning to approach, and even when you might hear a decision on those things, or what you plan to do if you don't raise all of your money. So use those spaces to really help us understand kind of how you're thinking about all these questions. Please don't expect Summer Youth Program Fund to cover your entire summer program budget. We are not able to do that, and it will raise serious questions about viability given that it's a competitive process. Most organizations receive some funding, but only about 25% have even their entire request to Summer Youth Program Fund met, right? Let alone the total cost of their program. So keep that in mind when you're putting together your budget. In general, increases in funding year over year, so from 2023 to 2024, are incremental, not astronomical. So it's likely that whatever you receive this year will be more or less in line with what you received last year, with some small allowances for program growth or inflation. But if you haven't received a huge grant in the past, it's not likely that you'll suddenly receive a huge grant unless, and this is always possible, that a bunch of new funders join Summer Youth Program Fund and we're able to increase the number of dollars available overall in the pool. I'll just wrap up here by saying there are a few ways to learn more about how to prepare your application. On September 8th, we ask you that you RSVP, we will have an orientation at Ivy Tech. There's more information about that on the Summer Youth Program Fund webpage, as well as the registration link. This year, we are doing something new. We're going to have a little kind of office hours grant clinic where you can bring your laptop and meet with someone and get some one-on-one help with your application. And that could include some help with writing your budget table or getting some clarification if you have questions. On the Summer Youth Program Fund page, you'll find some other resources to help you prepare your application. So there's a list of all the application questions, so you can take a look at that and start preparing all your answers and working ahead. There's a short video overviewing just what Summer Youth Program Fund is and how it works and what the timeline for decisions and things is. And there'll be a short video on how to get into Smart Simple, which is the online platform that we use to submit applications. So those are all great resources for you. If you need technical assistance with getting into Smart Simple or with the application, you can email grantsupport@cicf.org. Thank you.